that's why I think it's so important to have the ground rules, to have everyone being somehow a guardian of the vibe of the community, right? Not just leaders and managers. So this is very important. In Brazil, a yes is a maybe, and a maybe is a no.
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guest is Fernanda Caloi. Fernanda, I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
I'm super excited. You're really right. Brazil is not for beginners. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Excellent. So Fernanda, your current role, you are, I'm going to get the position wrong, but you're head of community at Latitud. Is that correct?
Wrong. But yeah, I feel I do a lot of community work too. But we don't have a head of community. I'm right now director of special projects, where I think is a good way of saying that I do whatever is a priority right now and no one else is taking care of. A lot of community things come up to that role. But yeah.
Wonderful. Well, anybody that's met you knows that you are a people person and know that community is really important to you. And so I just associate you with community there. But maybe to start, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about how you came to this role of special projects and coming back to this idea of community. What interested you there? I know you were also with Google for startups before this, so it'd be great to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to this role where community is involved but not exactly central.
Awesome. Yeah, it was really the special projects one was a very good way of Brian of like selling me the cherry on the top about coming to join Latitude. I was already 10 years at Google and I was ready to come to the other side. I was working with startups for 7 years there, and I was like shoulder to shoulder with some founders as seeing how hard it was, but also how exciting it was to be building something in Brazil in this decade. And I was already with a little bug below my ear. I don't know if we say that in English, but and I was
An earworm.
yeah. So that's it. And I think the Latitude opportunity came up as perfect as my next step outside of a big company and learning what it is to bring a business to life in Brazil. Latitude was building a business based on community, so community first, and started like learning the problems of this community and then building products for it. So I didn't want to jump in and have a fixed role already with a fixed scope because I wanted to learn so badly. Someone that stayed 10 years in the corporate world or in a more scoped place like Google was, then they said, that's awesome. We have a list of things that no one is taking care of. We'll make you our director of special projects. We'll list everything that needs to be done. We go one by one and you go from there. So community is always top of mind for us at Latitude. And that's how I ended saying, oh my God, is this a dream job? And are you sure you're offering me this job? And in the end, I think I made a very good decision when I jumped ship. Because this past 1 year and a few months that I've been with Latitude, every day I'm learning. Every day is a new world to me, and ups and downs in the startup life, of course. And this market, as we all know, also give us a lot of room to work with in terms of yeah. And that's how it all started. Now I feel 1 year later, I can say I'm more in the sales business development side because our products are a little more mature now, ready to be offered to the outside world. But this 1 year and a half was for sure super fun in learning a lot of things that has to be done in a startup.
Really interesting. I really love your trajectory and your shift. I also am somebody that recently shifted from more of a corporate role to the startup role, and I'm also loving it. I invited you on because you and I talk a lot about this idea of community. It's so important. But maybe before we get there, who is Brian? What is Latitude? I'm a fellow in Latitude, but maybe you could just tell everybody real quickly who Brian is and what Latitude is and why you were building community there.
Exactly. I think we tend to do that. We just act as everyone knows Brian and Latitude because they're almost like that. But yeah, Latitude started after Brian sold his business Viva Real to OLX, and he started like just wanting to giving back to founders and started having a lot of calls and mentoring a lot of people and doing a lot of angel checks. And then he saw that he could do a better job at scale. So long story, very short, he got some awesome partners in Gina and Yuri, and they started a fellowship. So a program that put together online because it was 2020 bright minds from all over Latin America, and they went over a bunch of topics that are important for people starting their businesses. So Brian would talk a lot about strategy and sales. Gina is a magician in everything that's related to growth and marketing. Yuri experienced CTO, so they had the perfect mix of people there, and they would do the mentoring and the program themselves in the first few cohorts. And Latitude became well known in the whole region because we didn't have geographic barriers during COVID, right? So everyone from the whole region could join. It was awesome. And they started seeing pain points that they could help founders with. Basically, what Latitude became after this community driven discovery is a way of remove friction to founders raising their rounds or starting their company. So we try to have products that will bundle together, but mostly they will be simplifying the way that a founder has to deal with bureaucracy behind opening a company. So forming your company, receiving money from VCs, bringing money abroad if you are opening an offshore structure, how to do compliance and taxes for this offshore structure that you just created and it's not easy. So a lot of things that are not very well taken care of right now, we are trying to put together so that we make lives of the founders easy. At the same time that we continue with the fellowship, so everyone can apply. Everyone, if you're a founder building a tech-based company in Latin America, you can apply. And we also have a fund that invests very early on these founders too. So it's a full suite to help you out in the first year of your startup, I would say.
Great. Well, I wanted to make sure you got your obligatory plug-in of Latitude. So, like I
Amazing.
said,
Thank
I'm
you.
a fellow. I'm a participant. I've used a number of the different tools, and I certainly recommend it. Latitude's obviously building a great reputation, and at the risk of being overly corny, is making Brazil easier for beginners in terms of some of those challenges like opening up an offshore structure, dealing with taxes, dealing with remitting money, a lot of those different things. And so the founders I talk to, people like Brian, or some of those first and second generation founders in Brazil and people doing business, really look back. They're like your parents that tell you the, 5 miles to school in a foot of snow, the hours and hours they would spend at the banks and the carporios and all this different stuff. And so Latitude is certainly helping make that journey easier. But like I said, what I really wanted to talk to you about, and you and I always enjoy chatting about, is this idea of community. And so the book, The Business of Belonging by David Spinks, is one I brought up to you that we've talked about. I think it's one of the better books that I've read from a business book perspective in the last couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to community building, how it's been developed, how it's evolved at your time at Google for Startups, at Latitude, and specifically what is unique about building community in Brazil in particular?
Awesome. Yeah, I really feel I started doing community before I even know how to phrase it because I was always, as you said, a people person, super social, loved being around people and would love to rally around causes and just get people involved in doing stuff together. So since school days and really running around Sao Paulo to do stuff, always in groups and never alone. So you end up finding similarities with people, things that you're interested in. So when you feel you belong, you will want to be there and you will give and take stuff from the community all the time. And when both things are happening is where I see that's most successful, because if I'm always giving and I don't take anything, one day I will feel yeah, is this for me? Or if I'm always taking, people will kick you out because you got to give too, right? So I think this balance between the contributions that people can make and also what they're getting from being part of a community is also makes a healthy one. And I think my approach to that started being professional in a way when I started in this role at Google that was to create the programs for startups in Brazil when we launched the Google for Startups team in Latin America. And then the programs were awesome. Oh my God, people would come 2 months with Google support and all these amazing mentors and events. But then when the program ended, you're back at your own. No, of course, you met all these people. So I think for me, the collection of people that went through our programs became this community that I was so excited to be the cheerleader and the person always nudging and doing more stuff. And I was getting paid to do that, right? So I think our approach of having an alumni community in the Google for Startups programs in Brazil was what really kicked to me. That was about, okay, here is a community super strong. They all have something common. They come from this. Oh, I went to a Google program, I took a lot of stuff from there, I also met amazing people. So these bonds remained, and I think the memories and the things that you pass through together are the ones that make this bond super strong, right? So that's it, learnings, and also everyone can help each other with shortcuts. And when you have the trust and you have a shortcut that you learn from someone in the same community, I think is the magic, the aha moments that happen there, so yeah, that's my approach, a little unstructured, but that's how I try to live.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I really liked your point about finding that balance between giving and taking. I think that's really important that there's different levels of buy-in that people have as they think about a community and as they think about involvement. And, you posted on a chat board or you participated in the Slack, and then that evolved to you went to an event, to you organized an event. And so I think finding that right balance, I don't know if you have any advice on how you can move people along the funnel, how people that are thinking about community can create an interest in giving beyond just taking.
Yeah, and that the book Give and Take is also one of my favorites. Really, if anyone haven't read from Adam Grant, it really brings like the scientific approach about why giving is a good idea. Because I can't, I don't want to do all the spoiler on the book, but givers are also super successful, not just takers. So in the end, he makes the point of why you should be a giver, and it's proven, right? So even your happiness and your wellness will be better if you do stuff for other people, not just for yourself. So this is a little bit of like going to spiritual mode here, and what we believe, and why we're here on earth. But for sure, when you find people there in the community and they're just takers, everyone around notice, because it's not the same vibe. So I don't know, at least in the communities that I have been very heavily involved, like Google and Latitude, it's an alarm that sounds when you see that someone is not on the same vibe of the others. And us, as like the people creating a minimum guidelines, or trying to have a little bit of a healthy community. It's not always black and white about what you should do with a certain situation. It always will depend in a community, because we try to make it very organic, but there are some guidelines, right? Because this rotten apple can like scare people away very quickly. So that's why I think it's so important to have the ground rules, to have everyone there committing, and everyone being somehow a guardian of the vibe of the community, right? Not just the community leaders and managers.
Those are really great points on the idea of creating basic guidelines. You don't want to over restrict and over police people, but setting the basic ground rules of how people should act within a community is really important. But beyond that, like you said, creating that sense of belonging and guardianship. I liked that word that you used, guardians of the community, is really a really great way to position it. And so, thinking a little bit more broadly, obviously, you and I, having come from a corporate world into now this startup space, our experiences within Latitude, obviously, on different sides. Me as a fellow, you as a staff member, think about and have a bias towards startups. But how do you think about community beyond startups? So Brazilians are very connected, some of the most socially active people in terms of online communities. And so, how does this online interest of Brazilians manifest itself in how you build community? How do you think about building community in Brazil generally?
Yeah, I think what it makes harder, and not for beginners, to make your path to a community in Brazil, is that there's so much that people want to do with you, and you're always like pulled from all directions. So I think this noise sometimes, and the non-ability of Brazilians to say no very clearly, is what makes it harder. So you have a lot of opportunities. Everyone wants you there. So we're super social. You're invited to many things from many different groups all the time, if you want, of course, because you can also stay at home. But there's a lot of stuff happening, especially if you're living in the big cities, I must say, of course, and online, sure. So filtering and really thinking about where your effort is better used, and where should you be putting your time, and not selfishly thinking, oh, I would get more value there. But it's a little bit of that too, because if you're putting effort, you're expecting somewhat of an output, and sometimes you're just going to everything but not like creating real bonds or committing to something. So I think that's one of the, and maybe it's not just in Brazil, but I think here there is a little bit of this, like, oh, you commit to a lot of things and then you don't know exactly where you are putting your best energy on, right? And when I said that Brazilians don't say no, yeah, we have a hard time saying no, I'm not going to your event because I'm already doing something else, or or not, because I'm just not going, and that's fine, and we don't do that. So we're always trying to, oh no, só uma passadinha, I'm just like drop in for a few minutes, and when you see, you're like tired and overwhelmed, and you're not giving your best to anyone because you're trying to please everyone. So I think this is typical from Brazilians, like average. So yeah, it's hard to kind of balance ourselves in a way.
My co-founder Daniel, who you know as well, he was living in Switzerland before moving back to Brazil. So he says a year in Brazil is like 5 years in Switzerland, just because of all of the things happening and all of the activities and all of the social events. Not to hate it all on Switzerland and the wonderful life that you can have there, but Brazil can be really intense.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, and something that we've talked about before, how Brazilians don't say no. And so, in that respect, getting people's involvement in different communities and getting them to go from takers to givers can be a challenge. But moving a little bit beyond this, and tying into community, one of the things that you and I have talked about as well, and I know something that's really important to you and is really important to Latitude, and it's a bit of a delicate issue, and so I'll try to tread reasonably lightly here, but is this idea of diversity. And so, especially in a country like Brazil, where over half the population, identifies as people of color, it's not reflected in business, and so you still have different inequality and different segmentations and things like that. How do you think about that in terms of how you're building community? You did it at Google, as you do in other areas, and as you think about in the context of Latitude in a startup ecosystem where it's especially male and white.
Yeah. And I went discovering my part as I started like being part of some communities, and some actually sectors, right? Because when you're invited into a sector like startups and VCs ecosystem, tech ecosystem in Brazil, like I was, because I just got a role in a tech company and I had to do my part there. So you kind of try to find your way, and then when you start to build your reputation, you get invited to more things, and then you see that you're playing this role of, like, if you are from a minority, like women, I don't think it's the right way of saying it, but an underrepresented group, and then you're in a table suddenly with three or four men, and then you have a voice, and then you're representing a big brand, and then everything that you say has a weight in some way, right? And you're representing a group. So then I started seeing my role as more and more important. Even it was not my choice. It's not that I decided, oh no, I want to be an activist for women inside the tech sector. No, but it happened. And then I could just decide if I wanted to make most out of it, or just say, no, it's not for me. And I went all in, and I really think like I'm opening doors from the inside. So that's how I see this issue, Isaac. I think everyone that gets into a club will open the door to someone else to get in, and you will try to do it for the ones that doesn't have the key, right? So if I see other people smart, talented, and the other side, but they happen not to be born someplace, or not to come from a social economic background that other people do, or didn't went to XYZ schools, so I mean, on the inside I can invite them in, but at the same time, the most important part that I learned also throughout my Google career is that if you don't make allies that will, when these people are in, they will also be friends with them and chat with them in the party, then it doesn't matter, because these people will come in and they won't feel belonging, right? So I really see my part in this issue of diversity, of opening doors for people that still don't know where they are, but also convincing the ones inside why this is like a good thing for us to do, right? So it's organic on my side, but I've seen people doing it in a more intentional way, and more I put that on my one of the things that I need to do. So it was not by chance that I got involved at the Black Founders Fund at Google, that is investing in startups funded by Black people. Being a woman, I'm also like involved in many groups that are trying to give the skills to women that are lacking for them to fundraise like men, because we're not playing golf or in the poker games, So it's harder because it was not natural, uh, and that I see as my part. But it's really something unique to my positioning, right? And I think everyone can find your part, but being an ally when you are on the majority group, like when men ask me how can help, I always say be an ally, or find some women to mentor, or bring someone else along that would not be like your first natural choice, you know? So it's everyone could do a little bit more. And I think we are all doing it, but maybe in a slow pace. And now some corporations are like backing up programs and doing stuff to accelerate that a little more. At Latitude, we have a hard time. Like sometimes it's like, oh no, we need to invest and to find more people from other groups that are not white male, from the major centers. Yeah, where are these people? So let's go find them. Let's go see what they need and that we're looking for and that they still haven't had contact with, you know? So it's not going to be solved in a heartbeat, but I think we're doing more things to advance the diversity in the ecosystem as a whole. Like we did an event 2 weeks ago. I know you're going to ask something about that. And I was super impressed of how we could get a good crowd there. And also in the stage was super important to us that we had more voices, like from other places and representation. So we're all paying attention to that now. It's not like, oh, I forgot. So everyone is paying attention.
That's really great. And I liked your point about not just obviously the opening the doors, but also creating that welcoming environment. Because if people come in and feel that it's not for them, then they're going to leave and it becomes doubly hard to get them to come back in.
Yeah.
And so there is more that everybody can do. But I think that creating a welcoming environment and being an ally to people is really, really important. Something that we think about at Teddy, we're not as diverse as we'd like to be, in part because we're small, but it's something that we think about a lot. And I think it ties really well to this idea of community. Now, at your work, both with Google and with Latitude, you talk to a lot of local and foreign investors and founders. So people in the region that are doing business, people in Brazil, obviously, because that's the focus, but they may be from other countries that are here, or people looking at people working in Brazil, people investing. And so I'm wondering what you've seen in your 10 plus years in this ecosystem as some of the common misconceptions that foreigners specifically have about doing business and starting businesses in Brazil. And also, kind of what are some of the common things that you find yourself having to share with them? Maybe this has evolved over time as well, and you can talk a little bit about how that's changed since you started till now.
Yeah, I think it was worse in the beginning, but it still exists. It's the time that an international foreign founder will find to understand really the dynamics about what Brazilians are saying to them. So this is very important. A yes is a maybe, and a maybe is a no. You know, so when someone finds out about that, their life changes because when they hear yes, they're like, oh, this person is all in. But in 2 days, the person will come back and will say, yeah, I thought a little bit better and maybe, you know. And when they say maybe, it's because they want to say no. So it's hard. It's a cultural thing.
Is there a yes that's a yes? I remember that I lived in South Africa, and there was they would say now or just now or now. And so if somebody said I'm coming now, they might come or they might not. If they're coming just now, they're starting to think about it. They're going to take a shower. And if it's now, then they're actually getting in the car. And so I'm wondering if there's something in Brazil where a yes is actually a yes, because
Yeah,
I'm also looking for that.
I agree. Maybe we should just sign contracts. No, but it's hard. It's a dynamic that is part of our culture, and maybe it's easier for foreigners to do business with themselves because they're more direct. We're never that direct. And some people, I think they learned intentionally how to be less, how do we say, accommodating all the time. And I got this feedback already personally from my managers. You are always trying to make everyone happy. And this is like sometimes you just gotta make some people not happy and that's it, you know. So that's a trait that I feel foreigners deal with when they come to Brazil. We're not direct. So and the Israeli culture, I learned a lot from my times at Google. We have an active Google for Startups team in Tel Aviv, and I would love to talk to them because it's always like if they say something, it is, you know. So I learned a lot by being exposed to other cultures, and I think we can have this little like nuances more clear in our heads. But yeah, some rules are not explicit, and I think that that's a good example on how sometimes the founders that come from outside, like they get a little time to feel how is the dynamics. But this changed a little bit because the ecosystem is more international than ever now. So a lot of people coming to do business here. Some of them so successful, right? Some of our unicorns have international founders, and I think then this culture kind of trickles down a little bit to people that worked with them. And but yeah, this is the way of like the Brazilian way.
Yeah, I think that last point you made there is really great, where you talked about the role of some of the foreigners. I'll sometimes joke with VCs that I'm the foreigner on the team that we did an analysis, and Nubank and Creditas and all the biggest companies in Brazil had a foreign founder. And so that's my role. But at the same time, I think you talked about things that foreigners miss. And I'm wondering, sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? Sometimes you can walk through a wall because you didn't know it was there. What are some of the things that you see that foreigners sometimes get right where Brazilians are being complacent? They're like, it's always been that way. It's never going to happen. So where do you see some of the foreigners winning out because of that directness or because of that unawareness that there was a wall or a rule that you couldn't do something?
Yeah, you nailed it, I think. They see the opportunity. They are not taken by this, oh, this has always been like that. So they come and they fix a problem that us Brazilians were like, just, nah, I'm not going to bother, you know? And I think one thing that they do well is that being direct and kind of like trying to oversee what the person is saying, they find right partners and they build great teams. So I think they're not thrown away by, oh no, I have to take that person because it's the cousin of my second, you know? No, it's like, I'm gonna do the right thing, you know? So I've heard a little from David and from Furio, they always had this mentality. No, it was a huge opportunity and it was just there, you know? So I think that's the directness that helps. And maybe a Brazilian would be like, no, I'm not going to build a bank because there's Itaú Santander and Bradesco, you know? And Davi was like, why not? So, yeah, maybe they got this speed on executing that for a Brazilian was more like, I don't know, should I? I can't convince a VC that I'm doing that. But now I think we Brazilians are inspired by their stories and we're more and more going after the big problems too.
Yeah, I really like that point there. And that's my next question, was actually that we're now on, I don't know if you want to call it the second or the third wave of startups here in Brazil. And so the people that started out initially, the founders of Mercado Livre and those guys that really built some of this ecosystem, they've exited, people have gone through, people have worked it. And so you're starting to see this development of an ecosystem. And that's what you're building in this sense of community, repeat founders and tech talent, people that have been through this journey before, maybe as a product manager or in another role now, building out their own company. And so I'm wondering what you find unique about the ecosystem in Brazil specifically, and what foreigners maybe are missing about it, right? It's still an undeveloped country or this or that. What are they missing about it? And I mean, for me, one of the things is the robustness of the ecosystem beyond Sao Paulo, and something you mentioned before, in terms
Mhm.
of how do you reach some of these other communities, the system in Curitiba, in the Northeast, and some of the other places. What do you think is unique, and what do you think foreigners are overlooking about the ecosystem for startups in Brazil now?
Yeah, I think like I don't know if this is something that we can influence that much, but it feels like some waves of development in some technologies or even like sectors. We're always 3 or 5 years behind the US, for example, right? So right now I see we're struggling to have a robust community around climate tech, for example. We have a few VCs that will talk about that. Even with these VCs, the founders have a hard time. And like we just need more people that understand and that want to bet. And I think Brazilians are a little conservative in the sense. So no, I'm going to stay with fintech and B2B SaaS because it's proven. So I think foreigners sometimes are like, no, let's do it because we need to do it because it's the right thing to do. Is the next wave of something. The same thing would apply, for example, for education. I think we have a few good examples in Brazil, but we're still missing like a really revolution in terms of how we get technology to be a part of it, and not only on the private startup solutions, but how do the government will be able to keep up and really like make a big part on this next generation that desperately needs like to learn things in another way and learn from what's happening. But the revolution is there, AI and everything, blockchain, whatever you want to say. People need to learn about it, and we're still not talking about that in any of the traditional schools, public sector. Let's not mention it. And I think maybe the we need this nudge and this presence of people that are doing this in other places of the world, bringing us a little bit of like what they already learned. So that's one of the things that I wish well, international people would bring to the ecosystem. But I think it's like a matter of time, and let's hope like things keep up even faster with all the technologies, because it's cycles, right? So things will get here and will benefit from it. But I wish, like for example, the climate sector, that this happened faster.
Yeah, that's something that I talk to people about here as well. I find a weird disconnect between, maybe it's not a disconnect, but coming from the US, where educational institutions, colleges, and universities really try to bring together teams across different specialties and different sectors for like applied science. And it seems like in Brazil, you have pure science and then you have business. And I think about the schools in the US where like Yale will bring you together, like they'll get somebody in the forestry department to talk with somebody at the business school, and something cool will happen there. And for some reason in Brazil, I don't know, you called it conservatism. It's something that I want to have somebody on eventually to talk about. But why is it that science tends to be kind of pure science instead of applied science? And I don't have an answer for it, but it's just something that I've noticed about Brazil. And it's really interesting that you brought that up. But I want to go a little bit deeper on the ecosystem thing. And specifically, you mentioned the event that you guys had recently. So you just wrapped up the Vamos Latam Summit, which is emerging as a really top event for startups in Brazil and Latin America. I sadly missed it because of my paternity leave and my new baby, but I know that we were well represented and that it was a great event. And so I was just hoping that you could talk a little about what is this event? What were some of the key takeaways? What left you feeling excited coming out of it this year?
Love it. It was really an effort to pull the event together, and we do it while building our startup, right? So, but we know it's such an important part on the ecosystem right now, because coming out of the pandemic in 22, we decided to run this event, and everyone was just eager for connection. So it was a 1,500 people event last year. And everyone was just like, "Thank you for doing this. I really need it." Everyone that I wanted to talk to was there in the same place. People that were fundraising, they said, "Oh my, it advanced my pipeline in 3 months just about the investors that I talked to in the event." So we saw that there was this urge to get people together in the same place, in a good environment, feeling that they belong, feeling that they should be there. So we decided to go bigger, right? And we triple almost the event, and we tried to keep the right people, like founders and people that want to talk about their companies first, and what they're doing, and find partners. And also the investors were there. And one of the things that I think we did very well is that we are attracting not only the Brazilian community. So everyone knows that Latitude is building for Latam. That's why it's called Vamos Latam, right? And it's not Vamos Brasil. Brian always says that. And that's why a lot of people come from the other countries. So Mexican was saying to us, "Oh my God, all the flights in that week for Brazil are super expensive. You guys, you did something well." And we're like, "No, let's talk to these airlines. But a lot of people came from the US too, from Europe. So I think we're creating a space where everyone feel like that they get together with the people that they not always have the chance to, and having an open time to talk about discussions that they want to have. And sometimes it's not super easy at Zoom, right? So you want to have this kind of like more organic, "Oh, this person is like," just grab them on the corner and continue the conversation. So it's nice to see the serendipity around an event, because you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to be introduced to. So our part is getting all the right people in the room and making them connect. And also I think the inspiration around the speakers and the content that we brought, we are super like surgical on getting like good themes and good speakers, people that really did stuff, and big stuff that can talk about it. So it's a combination of things, but we're proud of what we're putting together. It's only the second year, so we're going to improve a lot for next year too. But I think I'm already looking forward to it.
Awesome. Like you said, that serendipity when everybody's in the room together is really amazing. And I think it energizes people. One of the things that I think a lot about are activities that give energy. And sometimes you go to conferences and they're pretty draining.
Yeah,
And again, I didn't get to go to the one this year, but
for a good cause, right?
yes, yes, yes. I'm obviously pleased about the result, but I did feel like I missed out and heard really great things. One of the things, kind of talking about this, and obviously Vamos Latam is part of the sense of community and a big part of what Latitude brings. One of the other things that I know is big for you personally and also big within the Latitude community and kind of ties into some of these guidelines is this idea of gratitude. And I'm wondering how you think about that in the startup ecosystem and how you think about that in a Brazilian context. And what should foreigners think about when they think about how Brazilians express gratitude?
Yeah, that's a good topic. I just came back a month ago from Indonesia and I spent a lot of time in Bali, and I was like blown away how they live their life every day out of gratitude, because they're grateful for everything that happens. And I don't know if we're there yet in Brazil, but I feel we are people that can coexist with some big problems, I would say, in terms of our society, but still find ways to be happy and easygoing, I would say. So I think we have a culture that's very much like cheerful, and you always like have a good time when you're in Brazil, even like a lot of things going very badly economically, political in Brazil. So, and we're always like, okay, life goes on.
The beach is really beautiful in Brazil, I have to say. It's something to be grateful for. So
Yeah, exactly. The beach is beautiful. The beer is cold. So yeah. But for me personally, I think meditation was one of the things that made me feel more present. Every day, like even if my day is not going well, I'm always looking at the glass half full. I am this person. Sometimes people are like, "Can you not be so cheerful because everything's a mess right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can help it, because I'm always thinking that something, this is for a reason, and it will be better tomorrow." But for me, it comes back to one saying that's like, you have two ways of living life. One is if nothing was a miracle, and the other one is like everything was a miracle. And I choose like the second one. I don't know who said that now, but if you complain about everything that's happening, you will always have stuff to complain. And if you're always grateful and happy about stuff, and you think that things will get better, or this was happened for a reason, then it's a miracle too. So I am this person. Sometimes people are like, please don't be too happy because like it's annoying us. And I'm like, that's why I deal so well with community, because
I was going to say,
yeah,
that's the right personality for doing community, which is great, and why you're a people person. And I
yeah,
always say I'd rather be this way than the other way.
yeah. I know my strengths.
Yeah, exactly. You got to know your strengths.
I know my strengths, and I know also my blind side too.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're aware of it, you're good. I want to ask you. I always ask the guests, when you hear the expression "Brazil is not for beginners," what comes to mind for you?
That we are somehow unique, and like you don't read it directly, you have to have a time to kind of sink in. And what we were talking about in the beginning, like the dynamics and how do you go around like making business and friends in Brazil, it's there's some beauty to it, because when you're like sweating to get something done, then the reward is bigger, right? So in Brazil, I think the problems are huge. It's not for beginners to do business here, so I think that is a big one. And that's what we're working at Latitude right now, to make it a little easier. But yeah, everything seems to have like another little step that you didn't consider. Everything will cost more, will take more time, and will bring more problems. That happens all the time.
Yeah, I've said it on previous episodes as well that anybody that's done any time in Brazil is very familiar with the cartório, which is
Exactly.
unfortunate. But we've
Exactly.
all spent a lot of time there getting things signed and stamped. As a last question here, and we've talked about a few things actually. You talked about Brazilians aren't able to say no. They're not a very direct people, and some of these other kind of traits of Brazilians. But I'm wondering if there's any other particular parts of Brazilian culture or fun Brazilian expressions that really stand out for you that you think help explain Brazil to the rest of the world.
I love it, and I say all the time, and I really mean it. Vamos marcar. Like, let's set a date, right? I don't know how we would say in English. But the vamos marcar, it's like you always end the conversation with, we should get together, right? And that's like sometimes how I feel, but sometimes it's the way of ending the conversation. And I do that a lot, and I really want to get together with these people, but it doesn't fit on my 24 hours a day. But I feel that's an expression that is everywhere, and is like, yeah, sure, let's, in the end, who knows if we're gonna get together or not.
Yeah, I think something that I've had to learn is they don't take that personally when somebody says
Yeah,
"vamos marcar." They might not.
it
They
might
might.
just,
They might
yeah,
sincerely mean it, but it might just not be possible. And
yes,
so
that's it.
when you become best friends with somebody at a bar at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and then they say "vamos marcar," and then you can't meet them, don't take it personally. Next time you see them at the bar, they'll still be your best friend.
Exactly. That's it. Isaac, you already have an MBA for sure in Brazil.
I'm learning. I'm learning. There's a lot more for me to learn, which is why I started this, because I'm just trying to figure it out. But Fe, thank you so much for joining me. This was really a pleasure. I laughed a lot and really enjoyed it. I think you got some really great insights. Thanks so much for joining me.
It was so much fun. I love it that you're doing this. Congrats. It's an awesome way of introducing Brazil to others. I hope there was some insights here. And thanks for the conversation. It was really great.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us. This podcast was hosted by me, Isaac Matzner. It was produced by Amanda Villela and edited by Veronica Medina. You can find more episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as on our Substack page. We love feedback, so please feel free to reach out to us on social media or via email at Brazil4beginners@gmail.com.